I just spent a couple of hours testing Sun Tzu Prime before he even lands in Rise of Kingdoms, and I gotta say he actually has a 100% win rate. Yeah, he actually did not lose to a single commander pairing. So today we're gonna go over all of my pre-release test results, and I'm gonna share with you guys my recommendations for Sun Tzu Prime when he does land in Rise of Kingdoms, and then when we get some real open world test results, we'll be able to compare and see just how good he actually is when he arrives in just a couple of days. But first, what's going on, guys? Cheers. Now before we begin, like I said, this did actually take me a couple of hours, so if you guys appreciate pre-release test results for commanders before they land in the game, drop a thumbs up down below and consider subscribing. You might actually think you are, but you're actually not. Double check down below. All right, let's go over how we actually tested Sun Tzu Prime here. There are two phases of this test, okay? The first one is 1v1 duels, and this is the least accurate way to test Sun Tzu Prime. It's really the least accurate way to test anybody, but the reason that we do this is to see just how much damage can he sustain from the current open field meta, right? We compare him up against some of the most used commander pairings and see how well does he stack up compared to other meta marches. So we have some baselines that we're going to take a look at, so we kind of have an idea as to how good he might be. And then the second phase of this testing is a DPS check against 5 test dummies, and unlike the dueling test, this is where we actually get to see just how much damage this commander is pumping out. And again, we also have baselines, so we can see how much damage he is dealing and receiving compared to other open field meta marches. And so with both of these phases, we're able to test not just single target performance, but AoE performance, or the opportunity cost of not having a second AoE commander, because as you guys know, Sun Tzu is technically AoE, but he actually, most of his damage is to one target. So is it better to run Bai Chi with Liu Che, or is it better to run Sun Tzu with Bai Chi? That's one of many questions we're going to answer in today's video, and with that out of the way, let's jump right in here. Okay, now the first thing we have to cover is how did we actually do the test? Like, what did we test? What were the conditions of the test? And as you can see here, we are using the Rock Murder Ball tester. As you guys know, I am not affiliated with this project at all, but it is a super useful tool, so we've referenced it here a ton on the channel. And of course, just a quick disclaimer, this is not a replacement for actual in-game testing, okay, but it does actually give us a really good idea as to how good commanders are, because this software has been right way more times than it's been wrong when it comes to actually predicting the meta. And if you guys want to get access to it yourself, I'm going to link to it down below. The creator's name is Specco, super helpful guy and knows a ton about the game and the battle formulas and how everything works, and he was super fast to implement Sun Tzu Prime, and not only to implement him but also to fix a bug that was discovered in version 17.1. so if you're using 17.1 here, the third skill on Sun Tzu Prime is bugged, so make sure you update to 17.2. okay, now as you can see around me, we've got the testing parameters. What we have here is France for the infantry commanders with a 10% attack buff, VIP 17 to 18 on both sides because most players are not 19 plus. We of course are in the Season of Conquest mode with the 30% all damage on both sides. Here we have 15% attack, 15% defense, and 13% health. What this represents is a 7/7 rune and 8% attack, 8% defense from your armaments. okay, then we have a 5% health city skin plus again 8% health from your armaments. okay, I just picked a very generic distribution of stats so that way we can put the same on both sides and keep everything consistent. Then you can see with Crystal Tech we have 12.5% attack, 15% defense, 15% health, 400,000 troops on both sides. For cavalry we used Germany because I really wanted to make sure they had a special unit over here, and then you can see the talents on both sides. I did not use special talented equipment because most players do not have special talented everything. We ran the ring and horn on everything except for when we tested Emperor Qin, which of course we replaced the horn with the skill damage pendant, and then we did use the correct formation for whatever the different troop types were. And the only inscription that we put on there would be the top left inscription because this is the easiest to get. You get this from the KVK shop. okay, the only one that a majority of players might actually have. The rest all comes down to RNG and the amount of money that you spend. okay, so if you want to test like an absolute best case scenario, if you've spent millions of dollars on Rise of Kingdoms, you could download this program yourself in run those tests, but I wanted to do something that was a little bit more representative of what the average player might be using. And of course, some of you might have some special talents and stuff like that, but again, what's important is that we keep both sides the same, so that way we get accurate results for everything. Okay, now what we did was I ran 7 rounds of 1v1 tests, and then when we did the AoE damage per second test results, we ran it for 7 minutes straight. I'll explain that a little bit later in the video, but those were the testing parameters for Sun Tzu Prime. And with that being said, let's actually take a look at some of the results here, because that's why you clicked on the video after all. And of course, if you guys want to use timestamps, you can jump around this video. But anyway, first thing we tested was Sun Tzu Prime with William Wallace, because I have a feeling that this is going to be a really good pairing, and also this was actually in the reveal video, so I thought, okay, maybe the developers are pushing us in that direction. Let's actually test this first. And the first thing we tested against was Gangemchan with Achilles. Now the reason I started with this is because we have 3000 damage factor for both of the primaries here, and Achilles is a very common secondary for Gangemchan right now. Okay, so as you can see with the first test result, we have 200,000 units remaining for Sun Tzu Prime William Wallace. It is not even close, absolutely demolished here. Let's take a look at the second test result. 211,000 remaining for Sun Tzu Prime William Wallace. Next report, 227,000 remaining. Next report, 215,000 remaining. Next report, 205,000 remaining. 212,000 remaining for the second to last report, and then the final report was 222,000 remaining. Okay, so this is like a 3-to-1 trade ratio. The Gangemchan Achilles got absolutely clapped here, like literally just curb stomped. It's kind of insane. Gangemchan is supposed to perform really well. I know they're countered by infantry, but like we're supposed to see healing here, tankiness, and all that other stuff, and it just gets absolutely demolished. Next, we tested against Arthur primary with Achilles secondary, and we could see this actually did more damage to the Sun Tzu Prime William Wallace with 155k remaining, 152k remaining in the next report. The next report shows 158k remaining, 190k remaining, a little bit of an outlier there. The next report is 172k remaining, 181k remaining, and the final report is 212k remaining. Okay, so the Arthur Achilles performed a little bit better against the Sun Tzu William Wallace than the Gangemchan with Achilles. Let's take a look at the next test here. Here we actually tested Hua with Arthur. Okay, now the reason I did this is because again, Hua is a single target damage machine. He's got a ton of stats. King Arthur hits like a truck as the secondary here, and this is a pair that some of you guys might actually still be running. Now of course, for this we did test with the wedge formation. We made sure there was a special inscription there with Hunter. Okay, so I didn't forget about any of that. We're using the max skill damage talent build, by the way, and here you can see 113k remaining. Next report, 168k remaining for the Sun Tzu William Wallace. Next report, 114k remaining, 142k remaining, then we have 153k remaining, 149k remaining, and the final report is 105k remaining. So this actually, the Hua with Arthur, was the best dueling outcome for cavalry against Sun Tzu Prime William Wallace, which kind of crazy stuff there, not that surprising, but this is a great example as to why 1v1 duels are not a great way to test these commanders, right? Because if you looked at this, you would think, okay, well, Hua with Arthur is obviously the best cavalry pairing in the game, right? And that's obviously not true. Everybody can tell by now, they've used all the commanders in the field. They know Hua with Arthur is not the best. In a vacuum, in this niche scenario, they do perform super well. Okay, so Sun Tzu with Wallace absolutely clean swept all of the cavalry. Not that surprising considering the Cavs are countered by infantry. Let's take a look at what happens when we go up against archers. So first we check Emperor Qin with Seong-Gye. This is a super common pairing. This is maximum damage output. Okay, and again, I did not use the Horn of Fury here. I used the wedge formation with Hunter, all of that, and we used the Ottoman Empire civilization. All that being said, the first test result, you see 62k remaining for the Sun Tzu Prime William Wallace. Then we see another 62k remaining for Sun Tzu Prime William Wallace, 75k remaining, 110k remaining, 60k remaining, then we have 106k remaining, and the final test was 72k remaining. So again, a 7-0 sweep for Sun Tzu Prime William Wallace, which to me is surprising, but also keep in mind that Emperor Qin YSG really shines in AoE scenarios. In actual open world fighting, this is not a great representation of how they perform, because this is 1v1 duels. I mean, what are we talking about? Also, just to keep in mind, YSG does have his relic. Okay, so he does have that extra defense, defense. Next, I tested against Emperor Qin with Zhuge Liang, and you can see that the Sun Tzu Prime William Wallace won with 84k remaining. Next report is 65k remaining. Next report is 74k remaining. Next report is 71k remaining. Next report is 93k remaining. Then we've got 86k remaining, and then we've got 58k remaining. So again, very similar results to the YSG. I think this is, you know, more tanky but outputs slightly less damage, so you end up with a very similar result, especially in 1v1 testing just like this. So again, we see Sun Tzu Prime William Wallace is 7-0 sweeping Emperor Qin, even with Zhuge Liang, who is a little bit more tanky. So then I was like, okay, surely if we put Shajar in here with the healing, we will finally get some reports where Emperor Qin is winning, right? I mean, that's kind of like Shajar shines when there is healing involved in 1v1s. Let's see what happens here. So here we got 13k remaining, but if you look at the Sev wounds, we see way more Sev wounds on the archer side here. Okay, next report, we see the first ever defeat for Sun Tzu Prime William Wallace, and it came at a cost because the Emperor Qin Shajar still has more Sev wounds. Okay, 67k remaining for the archers over here. The next report, 132k remaining for the archers, but still a little bit more Sev wounds, which is kind of insane. That just goes to show the healing factor there. Next we have 44k remaining for the archers, 70k Sev, so still losing the Sev wound trade. Next we see 36k remaining for the archers with 71k Sev wounds. Then we see almost 100,000 left for the archers here, and a 39,000 remaining for the archers. So again, we see out of the 7 fights, the Sun Tzu Prime with William Wallace lost 6 of them, but they won the Sev wound trade in every single one of them, right? So trading better, in fact losing less power, even though they technically get defeated and get sent back to your city. Okay, now Emperor Qin with Shajar, I feel like is a pair that I personally don't see that often. I think this is something that you're going to run if you're going into altars, or if you are a, you know, an archer main who's running 3 different archers, maybe you're using this, but this to me is not a very common pairing. I don't see this very often, but I just wanted to test it here to see if we could get something that will send Sun Tzu Prime Wallace back to their city, and we achieved that goal. Next, let's test against some infantry. So first we tested against Ragnar Sepia with the wedge formation and Hunter. Again, they are running the France civilization and a full skill talent build. Okay, here you can see 238k remaining for the Sun Tzu Prime William Wallace, and this I feel like tells us a lot of what we need to know. Next report, 222k remaining for the Sun Tzu Prime. Then we've got 205k remaining, 220k remaining, 237k remaining, 226k remaining, and 210k remaining. So a 7-0 sweep against Ragnar Scipio. Not surprising to me, folks. You can let me know if that's surprising to you in the comments. Next we tested against Baichi with Liu Che, which is the cream of the crop right now for infantry, and you can see the Sun Tzu Prime William Wallace won this duel with 111,000 remaining. Next was 160k remaining, 131k remaining, 160k remaining, 114k remaining, 120k remaining, and 117k remaining. Okay, so once again 7-0 sweep, not even close, absolutely claps them, almost a 2-to-1 ratio for every single one there. Next we tested against Baichi William Wallace, and we see 123k remaining for the Sun Tzu Prime William Wallace. Next report is 110k remaining, 137k remaining, 131k remaining, 125k remaining, 95k remaining, and 126k remaining. So again, 7-0 sweep for Sun Tzu Prime William Wallace. But now let's test Sun Tzu Prime with Baichi, because I think this is another commander pairing that a lot of people are curious about. They want to know how this is going to do. So let's take a look at the duel reports for this, and then we'll move over to the AoE test results, where we actually see damage per second and damage taken per second. But real quick, Sun Tzu Prime Baichi versus Gangam Chan Achilles. You could see 200,000 left for the Sun Tzu Prime. Next report, 223k remaining. Then we've got 230k remaining. We've got 205k remaining. We've got 217k remaining. We've got 207k remaining, and we've got 226k remaining. So again, 7-0 sweep, not that surprising. Let's move on to the next report here. We go up against the Arthur Achilles, which remember performed even better than the Gangam Chan Achilles when we were doing the Sun Tzu Prime with William Wallace. We have 176k remaining for the Sun Tzu Baichi. Then we've got 109 198k remaining, we have 173k remaining, we have 177k remaining, we have 164k remaining, 198 and 168. So again, a 7-0 sweep. Not surprising, you guys are starting to see the trend here, so we're going to speed this up just a little bit. Now remember, Hwalith Arthur is the best performing cav up against the Sun Tzu William Wallace. Let's see how the Bai Chi performs here in that secondary slot. We have 124k remaining for the Sun Tzu, 159, 163, 168, 163, 148 and 130. Okay, so again, 7-0 sweep. The Hwalith Arthur still the best performing here in this vacuum best case scenario for them in the 1v1 duels. Next, let's test this against the Emperor Qin with Seong-Gye. We have 108k remaining for the Sun Tzu Prime. Then we have 85k remaining, 125, 111, 120, 146, 122. All right, so again, 7-0 sweep here. Very unsurprising stuff. Let's test against the Zhuyi Liang secondary, and what do you know, we get another 7-0 sweep. It is just an absolute bloodbath here. The Sun Tzu Bai Chi is completely undefeated. But now let's test against Emperor Qin Shijar, because that was the only thing that actually sent Sun Tzu Prime William Wallace back to their city, even though they won the trade. Let's see how the Sun Tzu Prime with Bai Chi fares here. Okay, so first test report, we have 95k remaining for the Sun Tzu Prime Bai Chi and a crazy 2-to-1 7 wound ratio. Next report, 72k remaining for the Sun Tzu. Next report, 80k remaining for the Sun Tzu. Next report, 102k remaining for the Sun Tzu. Then we've got 75k remaining, 70k remaining, 104k remaining. So here we see, by replacing the William Wallace with Bai Chi, we have a 7-0 sweep against the Emperor Qin Shijar, which, by the way, again, we took off the Horn of Fury, put on the pendant using wedge formation with Hunter, Ottoman Empire, all that stuff. 7-0 sweep with Sun Tzu Prime Bai Chi, and it won the Sev Wound trade. So clearly an improvement here when it comes to damage output by swapping the William Wallace with the Bai Chi. That's kind of crazy. Okay, so now that we see that, I think we kind of know what the rest of the test reports are going to be, because if Bai Chi is an improvement over William Wallace and the William Wallace secondary only lost to the Shijar secondary even though it won the Sev wounds, then I think we can go through these pretty quickly and see that against Bai Chi Liu Che, we do another 7-0 sweep here. Against Bai Chi William Wallace, you're going to see once again a 7-0 sweep with, you know, between 130 and 160,000k remaining for a lot of these. Then we tested Bai Chi with Hector, actually, just out of curiosity, because I'm like, what, maybe the tankiness of Hector will do something here. But actually the trades were even better for the Sun Tzu Prime than they were with the William Wallace, and that just goes to show that the William Wallace, you know, he just outputs more damage than Hector. Even though Hector has the better active skill, the William Wallace just performs better in this scenario. And then the last test, which is kind of pointless at this point, but it's Ragnar CPO, and of course it just gets absolutely demolished here. Okay, so Sun Tzu Prime with Bai Chi melted everybody's face off. It has a 100% win rate in the 1v1 duels, so that might be the commander pairing, but that doesn't paint the entire picture, because as you guys know, we have to see how they work in an AoE scenario, right? Because Sun Tzu Prime is only dealing damage to 2 targets at max, right? Which is crazy. But before we go over the results, let me actually just share with you guys how this works, because this is a little bit confusing to people that maybe don't play like RPGs. Like, for example, World of Warcraft has test dummies where you literally can just test your rotations, test your gear, and just see how much damage can you output against a test dummy, right? Which obviously is not a real enemy, but there is a very good purpose for running tests like this. As you can see, we've got all of the equipment, talent builds, and everything like that off to the right, and then off on the left here you'll actually see the amount of damage done and the amount of damage taken by the single army that we're testing in this scenario. So in this case, it's Sun Tzu with Bai Chi, and we've got 5 test dummies, so we are actually targeting and hitting the one directly in front of us, and then one of the other test dummies is going to be taking the AoE from Sun Tzu, the 1 extra shot here, because remember, the true damage is going to hit the one that you're targeting plus 1 more, so it's a total of 2 targets. But let's actually look at the most up-to-date data that I collected here, and again, this was a 7-minute test dummy. Just slam your face into them and deal as much damage as possible. Now, instead of going through all the screenshots, I compiled all of the data into this spreadsheet so we can look at all of it together and compare and contrast things to one another. And so on the left here, you can see we tested a bunch of different pairs that are meta or meta adjacent. The Sun Tzu tests are in gold here, and we have the damage dealt to the test dummies on this column, damage taken, and then we have a ratio, right? Because we want to know the trade ratio of these pairs. That's what a lot of people use to determine if a pair is good or not. It's not the only metric, right? Like sometimes you just want max damage, but a lot of people go for that trade ratio. Okay, so let's see Ragnar CPO CPO. Let's just use this as a baseline. Let's see what the numbers are. Okay, so after 7 minutes the Ragnar CPO output 11.8 million damage and took 685k back with a 17.2 ratio. Okay, so for every 17 damage dealt, it took 1 damage back. Now these numbers are going to be more inflated if you have higher stats and the enemy is the same, because remember, these are test dummies, right? They're not outputting a tremendous amount of damage, so the damage taken is way lower. Okay, but what's important is how these compare to other armies, right? Because again, this is a vacuum. The conditions are identical for every single one, including the damage that the enemies are outputting, right? And that's what makes this so important. Okay, so that's kind of our baseline here for infantry for Sun Tzu. Let's take a look at Sun Tzu Prime with William Wallace just to get a little bit of a comparison here, and we will see very similar trade ratio. Okay, so a little bit more damage dealt, and of course there's going to be some RNG there, right? We do have the ring, we have the horn, things like that. Damage taken a little bit higher as well. So in fact, the Sun Tzu Prime with William Wallace had a slightly worse ratio than Ragnar CPO. Now again, like I said earlier in the video, this doesn't really paint a complete picture because we're not factoring in things like march speed, right? We're also not factoring in other inscriptions, other special inscriptions, rare inscriptions, things like that. And when we look at wedge formation for infantry versus pincer formation for infantry, you're probably going to run pincer formation most of the time. But this also goes to show that the single target damage of Sun Tzu with William Wallace is so insanely high that it can compete with the 3 target AoE of Ragnar and with CPO. They both have AoE, right? Let's just let that sink in. Okay, the amount of single target damage, and I know there's the true damage AoE component, 2 single target damage commanders outputting the same amount of damage as Ragnar CPO, that says a lot. But now let's compare it to Emperor Qin with Zhuge Liang, just for funsies. Okay, we see an absolutely astonishing 27.9 ratio here. The damage output is through the roof with these archers. Let's just fill in all the archers. Okay, and you'll see that the Emperor Qin YSG, as we suspect, outputs the most amount of damage, but also takes a lot more damage than the Zhuge Liang. This is the conclusion that everyone basically arrived at this pretty soon after Emperor Qin came into the game. So if you want max damage, you go with YSG. If you want a slightly better trade ratio, you might want to go with Zhuge Liang. Now again, if you're fighting up against enemies that aren't really putting up a fight, then the YSG is the clear winner here, because you're not going to be taking that much damage, but you're going to be dealing that much damage out to the enemy, right? Now let's compare this to a cavalry march. Okay, let's just look at Genghis-Khan with Achilles. I think this is what a lot of people are running right now, and we can see 14.2 million damage dealt to 778k taken for an 18.3 ratio. And again, I want you guys to know, like, the damage dealt and taken is useful information, but the ratio is the main reason why we're running this test, because that's how we're going to compare it to everything else, right? So here you can see the Genghis-Khan with Achilles is dealing less damage than like the archers, for example, but more damage than the infantry, to the point where their ratio is significantly better. Okay, now that we've done that, let's just reveal the rest of the table so we have the complete picture and we can compare everything to one another. And you'll see here that if we sort this by ratio, you'll see, of course, Emperor Qin lands at the top here, and it's not even close, by the way, which is why I keep saying Emperor Qin is the best commander in the game. He is quite literally an outlier. He is that much better than everybody else. He is actually insane. If you're not getting good reports with Emperor Qin, I would just keep that to yourself, because that's like crazy, right? Like this, he just prints skill points. That's really it. And this just goes to show that. Okay, the only thing against these two commander pairs is that the secondary does not have march speed. Okay, so if you do get a bad report, it's just because you couldn't retreat in time or something like that, but otherwise you're going to be pumping out the damage here. Now you will see that in third place we have Sun Tzu with Bai Qi with a 19.2 ratio. So outside of Emperor Qin, we do see Bai Qi behind Sun Tzu being the best performing infantry march in this entire test, which is insane considering the fact that Sun Tzu is only technically an AoE commander. He is functionally more so a single target damage than an AoE damage, and that's probably why the true damage only hits 2 targets, right? Because when I saw that, I was like, oh, it only hits 2 targets, like that's really small. That's not even a 3 target AoE, right? But now we know why. If he hit 3 targets, he would be absolutely busted. Okay, so that's how good Sun Tzu Prime is. Really insane stuff here. Let's actually go ahead and sort this also by troop type, so we can kind of look at just the infantry themselves. Okay, because I think this is where a lot of people are trying to decide, you know, are you going to run run Sun Tzu Bai Chi and then William Wallace with Liu Che, or Liu Che with Alex, or something like that, maybe Liu Che with Hector or something if you have him? Or are you going to run the Sun Tzu with William Wallace and then continue to run the Bai Chi with the Liu Che? All right, and what you want to notice here is it looks like, based on this, the Sun Tzu Bai Chi is the single best infantry pairing in the game right now. Now again, you have to factor in a lot of stuff here because we're looking at trade ratio. So if you're looking for damage output, Bai Chi Liu Che is going to output significantly more damage than Sun Tzu Wallace or Ragnar Scipio, just in the same way that, you know, the Emperor Qin YSG outputs more damage than the Emperor Qin Zhuge Liang. Really, the Ragnar Scipio is just so tanky in this sort of vacuum testing, which is why he finds himself a little bit higher on the list. So keep that in mind. Now, when we want to decide what the best two pairs might be here, well, if we take a look at the damage ratio, okay, let's do this. If we just add up the ratios for Sun Tzu Prime with Liu Che, right, and we add that to the Bai Chi William Wallace ratio, what we will get here is a 33.1 trade ratio between the two of them, right, combined. That's what we're looking at here. But the other way you could run these commanders would be Sun Tzu Prime with William Wallace and then just continue to run the Bai Chi with Liu Che, and if we do the math on this one, you'll see it's a 33.6. so what we can see here is that the difference isn't astounding, right? It's actually pretty close if we're looking at just the trade ratio, but clearly the Sun Tzu Prime William Wallace seems to be the way to go, and then you just leave Bai Chi Liu Che alone, let them do their thing. They're a tried and true pair. You're just going to keep running them. That's it. But if you pay close attention, you'll see that because Sun Tzu Prime with Bai Chi is kind of an outlier for infantry, right? It's all the way up in the 19s for ratio. You actually can arrive at a better pairing if you run something like Sun Tzu Prime Bai Chi with Liu Che Hector, or if you run something like Sun Tzu Prime Bai Chi with William Wallace Liu Che. That is definitely something to keep in mind. For those of you that have Hector, this is something that you might consider. Now let's actually be a little bit more honest here. If we look at the Liu Che Hector, you'll see that the damage output is much lower, and that's because Hector's stat distribution lends itself to being a bit more tanky than having a bunch of attack like William Wallace. Okay, also, is the Hector so much better here than the William Wallace that I would invest in Hector just for this, just for open field? I would say probably not, right? If you actually run the Wallace with Liu Che, you get a very similar amount of damage output. You just take a little bit more damage in comparison. Also keep in mind that the Liu Che Hector is using the attack tree on Liu Che, whereas the William Wallace gets the smite tree. However, at least you've got an AoE as the primary, so there's definitely something to be said with that pairing, right? Also keep in mind, however, that we're talking about damage taken from test dummies, right? And so the damage output on an actual field is going to be way higher, right? And so can the Liu Che Hector actually sustain that? Probably not, right? Same thing with the William Wallace Liu Che, if we're being honest with ourselves. So frankly, I think these are the best ways to run these pairings. I think most players are either going to do the Sun Tzu Prime William Wallace with Bai Chi Liu Che, or they're going to run the Sun Tzu Prime Bai Chi with William Wallace Liu Che, and that's going to be your second pair. Now, if I were to point you in any single direction, first of all, I would say wait for real world testing, right? People who are actually in KVK, who are actually using these commanders, wait to see how they actually perform. If you're an infantry player who has two really good sets of gear, two really good sets of pincer armaments and everything like that, I would say the most balanced approach would be Sun Tzu Prime with William Wallace, Bai Chi with Liu Che. That's how I would go. If you have one set of gear that is way better than the other, if you have one set of armaments that is way better than the other, I would say do the Sun Tzu Prime Bai Chi, throw your best gear on there, so that way you can sort of min-max the performance of that march, and then you can run the William Wallace with Liu Che as your sort of secondary infantry march. Again, that's just kind of me going off of these early test results. I honestly, we have to wait for the actual in-game testing here. And of course, if you don't have William Wallace, then you would be running something like Liu Che Alex, which I didn't even bother testing because Alex's benefit is that he has the instant proc, which you obviously can't test really in the battle simulator. So just keep that in mind. Now, the last thing, if you do run the Sun Tzu Prime William Wallace with Bai Chi Liu Che, you know, let's say one of your gear sets is just slightly better than the other, I would say put the better gear on the Bai Chi Liu Che, because the Bai Chi is where the damage comes from, right? I mean, frankly, you could see that just by looking at this chart here. The ones with Bai Chi have the higher damage, right? Like that's just how it's going to be, and that's I think why the Sun Tzu Prime Bai Chi is an outlier, because Sun Tzu has the 900 rage requirement, so you are just pumping out that damage. It's just the skill cycles are crazy there, and I think that's why this works, even though Sun Tzu is really only a 2 target AoE. He just has so many other good things on the kit that you really can pop off. And with that being said, that's pretty much going to do it for the video. Some food for thought for you guys: are you going to be running the Sun Tzu Prime William Wallace and Bai Chi Liu Che, or are you going to do the Sun Tzu Prime Bai Chi and William Wallace with Liu Che? Let me know in the comment section below, or if there's another commander pairing, like for example if you have Hector, let me know what you're going to do in the comments. And if you made it to the end of the video, consider dropping a thumbs up on it. It really does help out the channel a ton. It helps get this video out into the YouTube algorithm so other Rise of Kingdoms players might see it, and you might think you're subscribed because you've seen a ton of my videos, but you're actually not. Double check down below. With that being said, guys, thank you so much for watching. This has been Omniarch. I'll talk to you guys again soon. Peace.